The resurrection of Jesus is the foundation of Christianity, for it is through his resurrection that we have hope for eternal life. In this lesson, Jesus has suffered capital punishment at the hands of the Romans with the support of Jewish leaders. It was an attempt to silence this new radical theology. Crucifixion was intended to satisfy Jewish leaders who felt threatened by this miracle working radical and to quash any Jewish hopes of a liberator freeing them from Roman captivity. Now that the leader of this Jesus movement was perceived to be gone, followers had to fall back in line and at least act cautious. The lesson we have today tells the story of two followers encountered by Jesus on the road to Emmaus on the day of his resurrection. They were talking about recent events surrounding Jesus. This has happened to me. A person that you're not terribly familiar with how they look, you see them out of context, it's easy not to recognize the people. These two followers are being asked to recognize a guy that they know to be dead. And so, if you have doubts, even things in front of your eyes can go missing. Not recognizing him, he approached them and asked what were they discussing. Now, because this was the headline news, the followers seemed a little bit incredulous, saying, "Are you new to Jerusalem? Have you not heard about the crucifixion of the great prophet because of the Jewish leaders?" One of them even said, "We had placed our hopes in that this man was the Redeemer of Israel." These followers were up to date because they say, "This is the third day. Women have found the burial site empty, and witnesses have verified that." This passage highlights the importance of recognizing that Jesus was the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecy. These followers were blinded to Jesus because of their doubts. Jesus rebukes the followers for not believing the prophets who spoke of his coming. He then proceeds to explain to them how everything that had happened to him was foretold in the Old Testament. In essence, the events around Jesus' death and resurrection, consistent with the Old Testament, further witnessed his status as the Messiah. Jesus acted as if he was going to continue further as the men got to the end of their journey, but they constrained him, saying, "No, stay with us," because even though they had their doubts, they still wanted to learn more. Jesus sat down with these two disciples to eat, and as he broke bread, their eyes were open. They recognized him. Modern Christians can apply this lesson by participating in the sacrament of communion or Eucharist, where we remember the sacrifice of Jesus and experience his presence. We can use the Eucharist and communion as a time to reflect and communicate with God, helping us to better see God, see Jesus, and understand his plan for our lives. While not directly in our lesson, this passage reminds us of the importance of sharing the good news of Jesus with others. After recognizing Jesus, the two disciples immediately went back to Jerusalem to tell the other disciples what had happened. Modern Christians can apply this lesson by sharing the gospel with those around us, whether it be through our words, our actions, or our attitudes. The two disciples on the road to Emmaus were discouraged and confused after Jesus' death, but their encounter with him renewed their faith and gave them hope. We too must trust in Jesus even when things seem hopeless or difficult, knowing that he is always with us and will never leave us. Since the pandemic, we've seen a significant decrease in weekly attendance at church. While many churches are hybrid now, this passage also highlights the importance of community in our Christian faith. The two disciples were on the road to Emmaus, They were not alone. They were confused and in grief, and they were traveling together, discussing the events, trying to piece it together. Then Jesus joins them on their journey and helps them get a deeper understanding. As modern Christians, we must seek community with each other, with other believers, being open to learn from one another. That's the lesson for this week. Have a great week. Bye.